gentlemen, we thank you for coming. My name is Andre Cushing. I'm the Assistant Majority Leader of the Maine House. My pleasure to welcome you to this press conference this morning. During this political season, we've heard a lot of comments as to what has and has not happened in the 125th legislature. We felt it was important to set the record straight. So we produced a publication that lists for you the many things that the 125th legislature did to improve the business climate in Maine and create a sense that government is here to work with businesses, not against them. It's my pleasure now to introduce the Senate Majority Leader, Senator John Courtney.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm John Courtney, and I'm the Senate Majority Leader, and it's a pleasure to talk about some of the accomplishments of the 125th legislature. I had the honor of being appointed as chairman of the Regulatory Reform Committee back at the beginning of the session by the Speaker and the President. And the work done on the Regulatory Reform Committee, I believe, set the tenor for the legislative session. We brought Republicans, Democrats, and Independents using the tools and the expertise of many on both sides of the aisle to solve some very intricate problems. When we started out, many people said that it couldn't be done. But we sent a strong commitment that we were interested in protecting Maine's environment while also protecting Maine for job creators so that we can have the same opportunity as people in other states have. It really was a hallmark of the effort. If you look at this 125th legislature, every major accomplishment was done with bipartisan support. While we're in the campaign season, and there are certain issues that some will try to show differences on, if you look at the overall accomplishments of this legislature, the bipartisan effort is unprecedented from previous legislatures in my lifetime. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work with the Speaker Nutting and President Ray and the leaders on the other side of the aisle too. Because one thing, that when we came into the majority, we realized that we were sent to govern. And for the last 2 years we have governed, and we have set Maine on a position and a trajectory to move forward in a very positive way. With that, I'd like to introduce the Speaker of the House, the 100th Speaker of the Maine House of Representatives, Speaker Bob Nutting.
Thank you, Senator, and I as well would like to welcome you all here this morning. It's my privilege and honor to stand before you as the 100th Speaker of the Maine House of Representatives. What a difference a change in majority can make. In 2010, Maine citizens went to the polls and voted. And what they said was that they wanted to reduce taxes, that they wanted to get rid of onerous regulations, that they wanted to stop the death spiral of Maine's health insurance market. And furthermore, they were tired of being number 50 in a list of business-friendly states. Maine was number 50. What they gave us was a chance. They gave us a chance, 2 years, to see how we could do after nearly 4 decades of control by the Democrats. We listened to what our constituents were saying. Unlike what we see in Washington, D.C., where they have constant gridlock and have for some time, this legislature has solved problems. And this is due to the new majority and the new leadership. Before becoming Speaker, I served 2 terms on the Appropriations Committee. In the minority, we saw budget after budget deal with issues on a one every year. Instead of looking at long-term solutions, we looked at changes that would fix things for a year. Those changes continue to crop up year after year. Now, in the majority, we have changed that, and we have instituted policies and put together a package of reforms that will serve us well for more than 12 months. Democrats often settle for majority budgets, on 2 occasions ramming them through and adjourning the legislature and calling the legislature back in to deal with the 1,000 or so bills that we're still left to work on. Working side by side, though, in the majority of cases, in 5 out of the 6 budgets, we passed with an overwhelming majority things gets Maine working, gets Maine's people working. In the past 2 years, we've begun that package of reforms that will allow Maine to excel at business creation. I think by any fair assessment, that we have turned the ship of state around. Certainly we have not fixed all of Maine's problems. We know people are still hurting. We know the economy is still poor. But the only way really that state government can affect job creation in the short term, immediately, is to hire state employees. I don't think people want to do that. What we've done instead is put together this package of reforms that will allow Maine entrepreneurs to build their businesses without high taxes, without onerous regulations, and for the foreseeable future, not just for the next 12 months. So with that, I'd like to introduce the President of the Maine State Senate, Kevin Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's a pleasure to be here with my Republican colleagues from the House and Senate. There are a couple of things that distinguish the Maine legislature among legislatures across this nation. One, as you heard from Speaker Nutting, is the fact that we work together across party lines, a welcome respite from the bitter partisanship and polarization that is gripping and crippling a dysfunctional Washington and has been on display in many other states. That started with the first appointments that the Speaker and I made upon coming into office. As mentioned by Senator Courtney, our appointments to the Regulatory Reform Committee were crucial in setting a tone. Likewise, in naming the chairs of the Appropriations Committee, we selected leaders with a willingness and an ability to be patient, to stay at the table, to do the hard work of listening and having conversations in a respectful way, to work through differences. And it was grounded in the relationships built across the aisle at the leadership level. Every Thursday night of the legislative session for 2 years, the Speaker and I sat down for dinner with the Democratic leader of the House and the Democratic leader of the Senate. We did that precisely to build and to maintain open lines of communication, respect, and even friendship that I believed helped to set the positive, constructive tone of this legislature. Secondly, we set priorities, something that Maine people wanted us to do and something that Washington seems unable or unwilling to do. We set priorities in balancing our budgets. 5 out of 6 of those budgets received the unanimous support of the Appropriations Committee. We set priorities like the Regulatory Reform Bill that the Speaker and I sponsored and that Senator Courtney and Representative McCain helped to usher through to passage. 35-0 in the Senate, 147-3 in the House of Representatives. We reduced Maine's crushing tax burden on Mainers at every level, including doubling the exemption on, with respect to the death tax that makes it so difficult to keep family farms and small businesses going from generation to generation. Creating tax incentives to encourage investment and job creation in the aviation sector through the Maine New Markets Tax Credit that is on track to help bring jobs to parts of the state that have been left behind. Taking steps to combat the regulations that have pushed insurers out of Maine, resulting in crushing annual premium increases year after year. Bipartisan pension reform that reduced debt by $1.7 billion and has left Maine's debt clock ticking backwards in stark contrast to the national debt clock. In the same way, under new leadership, the 125th legislature enacted positive changes to our education system. We cut the legislature's budget by $9 million, but we increased K-12 education funding by $63 million over the biennium. We adjusted the school funding formula to try to bring more equity to rural schools. Maine became America's 41st state to allow for the creation of charter schools. In so doing, Maine students who excel outside the traditional classroom environment have a chance to make their dreams come true. We celebrated the first opening just days ago at Goodwill Hingham. We created a system for rewarding high-performing teachers and took steps to begin developing for teachers and administrators a performance evaluation system. Finally, under new leadership, the 125th legislature has made strides toward restoring people's trust and faith in state government by tackling long simmering problems at the Maine Turnpike Authority, Maine State Housing Authority. I sponsored a new law that requires stricter reporting for legislators whose income is dependent upon state contracts. Taken together, these measures and other measures about which my colleagues have spoken today show clearly that under the new leadership of the 125th legislature, the first Republican majority in many years, we took seriously the direction that we were given by the voters of Maine in 2010 by enacting a series of positive reforms that honor the responsibility we were given by the people of Maine. And perhaps just as important as what we did is how we did it. I believe we have done Maine people proud by reaching out in a respectful, inclusive way to the Democratic minority, working with them, bringing to bear for the people of Maine bipartisan policies that have won the support of not just a Republican majority, but members of the Democratic minority, and in the case of the Senate, are independent as well. So with that, I will turn it back to Senator Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next speaker is going to be Katie Kelly, the general manager of the Driftman's Motel in Wells Beach.
My name is Katie. I'm from Lafayette's Oceanfront Resort. Driftman's is one of our buildings. And we had wanted to put an elevator in that particular building because it's an oceanfront building. A lot of our guests like to go to the second floor. The view's a little bit better up there. The building's on the beach. So about 13 years ago, we put a permit in to try to get an elevator so that our guests could get to the second floor. And the DEP at that point said that it wasn't possible to do that because there was a sand dune underneath the parking lot. It had been paved longer than I've been alive. But there was a sand dune under there, so therefore we couldn't get a permit. And the reason it took so long is they really tried to get us to withdraw the application rather than receive a denial, because they often went to a lot of legislative hearings. The Department of Environmental Protection went to hearings and said they never denied a permit. So we felt we either needed a yes or a no, either an approval or a denial. And it took 13 years, about $150,000 to get that denial. So this past legislative session, Kathy Chase worked with several members of the Human Resources Committee and the Governor's Office, and truthfully, it was an effort on a whole lot of people to get a piece of legislation passed that would allow us to build an elevator. It put some common sense into some rules that just didn't make a whole lot of common sense, because the elevator was not on the beach side, it was not impacting the sand. It's going to allow us to have guests on the second floor enjoying the beach. It's going to put us in a better competitive position outside of the state against other oceanfront hotels in Massachusetts, New Jersey, Florida, because other oceanfront communities are able to put elevators on their hotel buildings, and we were not able to. So the elevator is due to start within the next month, and hopefully it'll be ready for our next season. And I want to say thank you to everybody for all of their efforts.